the 46th overall pick, a pure speedster that Denver took after taking Jerry Jeudy in the first round. They paired him with a second-round wide receiver in KJ Hamler out of Penn State. To me, he has a lot of upside, but then kind of an equally leveled downside. Mike, I'm interested to hear your take on KJ Hamler.
Love KJ Hamler, probably one of my top dynasty buys, just given what his cost is. He's currently going in the third round of rookie drafts, and he has second round draft capital. His analytical profile is like top notch, elite breakout, elite dominator. He didn't run the 40, but it was reported that he runs a 4.2, and it kind of translates on film because I think he had a top speed of 21.76 miles per hour when he was recorded. And just for reference, I think Devin Duvernay, who's also known as a speedster, ran like a 4.38 in the combine. His top speed was about 21 miles per hour. So he's a burner. And I think, you kind of touched on it, right? Like they drafted Jerry Jeudy. They drafted Hamler. They also have Noah Fant. They have Cortland Sutton. So it's kind of a surprise pick, and people are scared off of him because it's like crowded, right? There's too much talent. There's too much competition. But, my philosophy is, look, don't deal in absolutes, right? We don't know if Jerry Jeudy is bust proof. What happens if Jerry Judy's not good? What happens if KJ Hamler takes that wide receiver 2 job? Then you're looking at like a potential Desean Jackson, which is like my comp for him, actually. So I love the upside there for dynasty. Redraft, you just got to stay away because you're not going to try and invest in the third or fourth best pass catcher from Drew Locke. But for dynasty, he's one of the most glaring buys for me right now.
Yeah, I love that you had the Desean Jackson comp there. Because my comp for KJ Hamler actually came out a lot differently. My comp for him was Tedd Ginn Jr. I really hope he ends up as more of a Desean Jackson. But when I didn't know a lot about Hamler coming into the draft, to be honest. But when I started digging into this guy, he's 5'9", 176. He's tiny. He's electric. He's fast. He's also probably going to get some run in special teams. And Tedd Ginn was the same way. Tedd Ginn was the 9th overall pick in the first round when he came out of college. So the playmaking ability is there, but then you look at what Ginn struggled with throughout his career, and it was drop issues. And the good thing is you can't teach speed, but you can teach someone to catch a football. But when I look at Hamler's stats, I read something that said he dropped 12 passes last year on only 68 catchable throws. So he really needs to clean that up if he wants to carve out a role in this offense. So I like what you said about Hamler, though. I think he's a good flyer. He could take over. It's so true. We talk in absolutes when we think about these rookies, and we assume that everything, all the narratives in the offseason are going to play out. And every fantasy football season by week 15 or 16, you're like, how the heck am I starting, DeAndre Washington and Brashad Perriman in my championship round? So there's definitely going to be some surprises. And if you can get a guy in round 3 of rookie drafts in Dynasty who could end up maybe being that, why not? So for redraft, I think it's kind of the same thing. I'm probably not taking him. Maybe midway through the season, he is a waiver pickup like we talked about earlier. But when I think about winners and losers here, I think the biggest winner, and this one's obvious, is Drew Locke. They bring in Melvin Gordon, Jeudy, and Hamler in the offseason through the draft and through free agency, and then they already have Phillip Lindsay, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant. This is quickly becoming one of the best young, talented offenses in the NFL. When I think about losers, between Jeudy and Hamler, I actually am taking Fant down ever so slightly. I know there's been a lot of bullishness about Noah Fant, but when it was just Sutton and Fant, it's like, Fant's going to see 120 targets this year. Now that they have brought in Jeudy and Hamler, I'm, tempering my expectations a little bit. I still do like Fant a lot as a breakout candidate, but based on how that ADP ends up come redraft season, it remains to be seen whether I'll be willing to take him or not. But Denver's offense might be a force to be reckoned with this year.
So you talk about that great young nucleus they have in Denver, but there's still the angry old man there saying, get off my lawn, and Melvin Gordon. And that, to me, is where a lot of that volume is going to go. In 2019, they ran 10th most often, the Broncos did, with Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay getting carries, which means they were in the bottom 10 in terms of pass percentage. Maybe Pat Shurmur coming in changes that offense, but I don't want to overvalue that too much. The volume isn't going to be enough for Hamler. Maybe if it was just him and Sutton with no Jeudy, maybe you look at him there. But I do like him as a best ball or DFS option. I feel like John Elway is trying to make the Broncos into what the Chiefs are. And I see this Hamler pick as being get your Mecole Hardman or your Tyreek Hill type of guy. If you look at Mecole Hardman last year, which is where I think Hamler could be around, he had 26 receptions on 41 targets, 20.7 yards per reception. You just don't draft that in redraft, but I do really like him in a best ball and in a dynasty. like you said, Mike, stash and wait and see if we can land that upside in the third round of a rookie draft. I think that would be huge. Anything else to add on Hamler here?
Yeah, I think you touched on it, but Denver Broncos ran super heavy last year, but they didn't invest their first and second round picks and wide receivers to kind of run that same offense. So I am projecting a little bit of an uptick on the volume there. And the other thing is, Hamler is not just a speedster. He's really, really twitchy and good in space. So I can definitely see them running like similar roles where Nicole Harmon, where they kind of like give him a screen or a jet sweep or reverse something like that and kind of see what he does with it. Because when he's in tight spaces, he makes grown men look quite foolish from his days in PSU.
Another thing to think about with that run-heavy offense, Joe Flacco played 8 games last year. It seems like it was, a decade ago that people were talking about Joe Flacco being elite. But with Drew Locke and the weapons they brought in, there's just
who
no
was
chance
talking about that? And someone was talking about Joe Flacco being elite.
Hey, I live in Baltimore, man. It was a hot topic up here. but yeah, I mean, to that point, I think even though they did bring in Melvin Gordon, it was just tough for me when I'm statting out the Broncos to think like, how am I going to stat out Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay if there's not as many rushing attempts? But then how am I going to stat out all these receivers and Noah Fant if there's not more passing attempts? So I do think they run more plays as a whole. And Phillip Lindsay ended up being a big loser as well, but that's not related to Hamler. That's a whole different story with Melvin Gordon.
Yep.